Greetings. Welcome to today's lecture. Today, we're going to talk about dual photography. This paper was first presented in SIGGRAPH 2005. The authors Brad Gibson and his team came from Stanford and Cornell University. To begin with, let me tell you a brief overview of today's dual photography. This is a very common setting of structured light in this picture, where we employ a projector to illuminate the scene and use a camera to capture the returning lights. However, dual photography is aimed to not only capture those returning lights, but also computationally synthesize the image from the viewpoint of the projector, illuminated by the lights coming from the original position of the camera. Before we dive into details about dual photography, let me give you a brief introduction to light transport. Then we will discuss about dual photography with an interesting application. Before we show more powerful application, I'd like to introduce the efficient algorithm for light transport matrix acquisition mentioned in this paper. The further applications will include scene relighting and 6D reflectance field capture. Finally, we will end up with some necessary conclusions. In this chapter, we will study how light transport in a scene. First, let's look at the light choices of a photon. When light ray hits a surface, multiple physical phenomena will happen simultaneously. The most familiar ones to us are the absorption, which means some light energy will be lost; diffusion, lights are redirected into many directions; mirror reflection, or maybe refraction. But considering common things or objects in our life, lights never bounce only once. A light passing into our eyes may go through many surfaces. Therefore, we should further consider subsurface scattering and the interreflection between multiple surfaces. To model light transport, we introduce bidirectional distribution functions here. Considering reflection happening on a surface, a bidirectional reflection distribution function can describe the ratio of reflected radiance existing along the direction omega r. You can find the omega r in this picture, to the irradiance incident on the surface from angle omega I. You can find omega I in this picture as well. For now, you may not know about radiance and irradiance, but conceptually, here we can simply take radiance and the irradiance as the amount of the leaving or incoming light energy. Bidirectional reflection distribution function can have some physical properties. The first one is that if we take integration on the BRTF along every single incident direction, the result should be less than 1. This naturally follows the law of conservation of energy. The second one is today's main character, Helmholtz reciprocity. We will talk about whose details later. Here it says, even if we reverse the light directions, the ratio will be unchanged, namely, the light transports in the same way. Mathematically, BRDF is a symmetric function. But for now, you may ask why we need to know about light transport. When we study light transport, we can obtain rich geometric information about the scene, so that we can effectively recover the 3D shape. We can further simulate light travelings in our scene and generate realistic, relighted photos. The simple yet popular way to record light transport is to capture a reflectance field, which can tell how will reflected light go given a certain illumination condition. Let's record the 4D representation of a light field, which is aimed to capture every single incident light to a camera. Now I invite you to the figure B, where you will see how two planes can represent every single light, except those parallel with these planes. But here, we also want to represent every single instant light ray to the scene in addition, so we introduced another 4D tuple. In total, a full representation of the reflectance field should be 80 tuples. Now consider the following scenarios. When the projector position or the camera position is fixed, the representation is reduced to 6D. Think about that. One plane in figure B will reduce to a point, so the dimension is reduced by 2. For the same reason, when we fix both, the representation is reduced to 4D tuples. I find these notions really important because we soon will see the application of dual photography to reflectance field. Of course, we cannot enumerate every single reflectance field. However, if we consider the light transport as a linear system, we can formulate it using light transport matrix. The light transport matrix can be seen as a linear transformation, which maps projector pixels to camera pixels. To make sense of light transport matrix, let's claim two axioms, linearity and the superposition principle. The linearity tells that the incoming irradiance times a coefficient equals to the radiance coming to the camera. The superposition principle tells that if we know all the irradiance of every single light, we can simply sum them up to get the camera response. Here's an example. On the bottom right corner, you'll see the light emits two irradiance I1 and I2, and their readings are alpha1 times I1 and alpha2 times I2 respectively. This is because of the linearity. And the final camera response is the sum of alpha1 I1 and alpha2 I2. This is because of superposition principle. To have better understanding of light transport matrix, let me give you two perspectives. First, let's look into the columns of light transport matrix. Every single projector pixel can contribute several or many pixels to the camera, which corresponds to a certain column in light transport matrix. So the final image should be a linear compilation of these contributions, namely the linear compilation of the columns in the light transport matrix. To be intuitive, let's look at an example on your left. Suppose we light up all the pixels one by one, and then we can get the separate contributions, C'1 up to C'PQ. Notice that how do we get these contributions separately? We just multiply the projector irradiance with the coefficient vectors as the column vector in the light transport matrix. Once we get all these contributions, we sum up together to get a final image. You can find that we use linearity to get the separate contributions here, and we sum up together due to the superposition principle. In conclusion, you can see the final camera response is a linear compilation of the columns in the light transport matrix. For the second perspective, let's look into the rules of light transport matrix. Consider one single pixel of the camera, which is affected by several or many projected pixels indeed. For the linearity of the light transport, its value should be a weighted sum of the projected pixels, where the weights are recorded in the rules of light transport matrix. Here's a concrete example. Consider the projector has only 4 pixels, which emit P1 up to P4 irradiance to the scene. And we only consider 1 pixel in the camera, which is Ci in this scenario. The returning irradiance to the Ci are T1 times P1 up to T4 times P4. This is true because of the linearity. How do we compute the value of the Ci? We simply sum all the readings up. This is because of the superposition principle here. So we can write the Ci as the product of the row vector with the projected image. If we consider for every eye, namely for every pixel in the camera image, we can write the camera response as a product of a coefficient matrix with the projected image. And the coefficient matrix is so-called light transport matrix. Now, we are almost ready for the topics about dual photography. Again, let me introduce these two configurations again. The primary configuration are the same with a conventional structured light system, while in dual configuration, we want to virtually interchange the position of the camera and the projector to generate the image and the viewpoint of the original projector. To implement this, we leverage Helmholtz reciprocity. Helmholtz reciprocity such light transport is symmetric. Here, let's consider the following example. Suppose the light source on the top left corner emits irradiance I to the object, and produces outgoing irradiance alpha I to the eye. Then we interchange the position of the light source and the eye, and light source still emits irradiance I to the object. The irradiance to the eye will be equal to alpha I again. This is the fact that the Helmholtz reciprocity exactly tells us. Combine Helmholtz reciprocity with the light transport matrix. We draw a really important conclusion. The light transport matrix T prime for the dual domain equals to the transpose of the light transport matrix for the primal domain. Here, I won't show you a complete proof, but here's an intuitive proof for you. So let's see. Recording what we've seen in the previous slices, let's suppose the jth pixel of the projected image emits P prime J irradiance to the scene, and its contribution to the ith pixel of the camera should be a coefficient times P prime J. How do you find this coefficient? Or how do you find this coefficient in the following matrix form? Consider that which value in this T matrix will be multiplied to the jth entry of the P prime to get the ith value of C prime. The answer is Tij, which means the contribution of jth pixel in the projected value to the ith pixel of the camera should be Tij times P prime J. Now, we interchange the role of projector and camera and name them as the virtual projector and the virtual camera respectively. And now we suppose we want to light up the highest pixel in the virtual projector with C prime I irradiance, and its contribution to the jth pixel of the virtual camera should be another coefficient times C prime I, right? For the same reason, we can find this coefficient in the jth row and ith column of T prime. So the contribution should be T prime Ji times C prime I. Now recall what we talked about the Helmholtz reciprocity. The coefficient should be the same, which means Tij should equal to T prime Ji. Now consider for every ij we have this relationship, so we can conclude the proof. Now we can draw some early conclusions of dual photography. First, we can generate the image and the viewpoint of the projector. Second, as we can interchange the role of camera and projector, we namely have more light sources. We can also utilize it for relighting scenes, that we'll see later. With this, let me show you something interesting. Imagine without camera. We simply reduce the pixel array in camera to photoresistor, which we can regard as then one pixel sensor. Therefore, the light transport matrix is reduced to a vector of projector resolution lengths. We can scan the projector grid by grid to obtain the values of T1 up to TPQ in this vector. Here's an example. Suppose we emit a irradiance P'1 to the scene and we get the response C'1 through the photoresistor. Then we can resolve T1 through this equation, and we can emit another irradiance to the scene and get another response through the photoresistor. Similarly, we can resolve T2, and we emit P'3 and get T3, and we emit P'4 and we get T4. By doing this, we can obtain every element in the light transport vector. Afterward, we can virtually exchange the photoresistor and the projector, and all the light pulses will be reversed. Then we can synthesize the image formed at the viewpoint of the projector by multiplying the scalar C double prime to the obtained light transport vector. In this scenario, the photoresistor turns out to be a point light source. We can even adjust its value to relight the whole scene with different brightness. Notice that the dual photography needs to acquire the light transport matrix in the primary domain. In general, this process, as mentioned before, can be a simple brute force pixel by pixel scanning. At each time, we can obtain one column of the light transport matrix. However, it can be rather slow, so the authors spend a lot of efforts to accelerate this process while maintaining their robustness. One greatest improvement is to parallelize the projector scaling. Here's an observation. Each projected pixel can only affect a small localized region of the scene, which is followed by the insight that the columns in light transport matrix are very sparse. We can utilize this property to light up multiple pixels without interference at one time, and capture a mixture of corresponding images which can be separated out through post-processing. Here are two examples. First, the left one tells that suppose the ith column of T matrix has only a small part of non-zero values. Sorry for the inconvenience here because I don't think my screen recorder can record my laser pointer here. But my point here is that only the orange area in the ith column contains non-zero values. And if we light up the ith entry of the P prime, you will get corresponding orange responses in C prime. And here comes up another column J. Similarly, only a small part of the J, I mean the blue part, contains non-zero values. So if we light up J simultaneously, we will get a mixture of orange response and a blue response. If these two responses have no overlapping, we can separate them technically through post-processing. But for the right example, we will see the blue part is overlapped by the orange part, so we cannot separate them easily. So in this case, we cannot parallelize I and J. Following this motivation, the authors first proposed a simple yet effective fixed pattern for scanning parallelization. with this assumption that the distant projected pixels are conflict-free. The authors divide the projected image into small square blocks. At every scanning event, they light up only one pixel for each block. To separate out the measurements, the authors use a trick that every pixel to be lit will spell out the binary code of its block number to indicate which values are actually contributed by this pixel. Take a look at the right illustration. It shows which pixels should be lit at every time, and which pattern should they produce. For example, in the second frame, the pixel on the top right corner of the second block should be lit up, and it's supposed to produce the temporal pattern 01. Nevertheless, there still exist some issues. For issue 1, the influence of pixels near the boundary may exceed the edge of the block, which causes mislabeling. To alleviate it, they shine block with an offset. For example, let's look at the figure here. We won't light up the left top corner pixel of the second block, but instead we light up the pixel far off the boundary. For issue 2, blocks can be mislabeled due to noisy measurements. The author adopted Hamming code to correct this. Regarding Hamming code, I'm not able to tell the whole story, but I can see it's widely used in computer systems to correct bits. In addition to the fixed path scanning, they also proposed an adaptive scanning, a more intelligent way to parallelize this process. It's an iterative algorithm which starts iteration from illuminating all the pixels at one time. For every iteration, they apply the illumination and capture the corresponding images. Then they create a set bk for every pixel to record which blocks contribute to the pixel k. This can be done by testing if any illumination blocks produce image with non-zero value at the pixel k. Afterward, they kill away blocks that do not contribute to any pixels and subdivide the remaining blocks. Then, they establish a conflict graph to indicate which blocks cannot be parallelized in the next iteration. The nodes of the conflict graph are all the sub-blocks, and once a pair contributes to a same pixel, the edge will be established between them. Finally, they adopt a graph coloring algorithm to group blocks that can be parallelized. The blocks with same color are synchronously lighted up. Here, let's dive into the pseudocode of this adaptive algorithm. The bk here actually records the candidate blocks which may have contribution to the pixel k, and the conflict set zk build edges between every pair in bk. Because we expect blocks in bk have effect on k, we certainly do not want to light up them simultaneously. The point here is to test these candidates individually to see which blocks really affect the pixel k. First, we assume all pixels are affected by the only existing white block, and naturally, no conflicts. For every iteration, we adopt a graph coloring algorithm to create different groups of blocks. Then, blocks of the same group will be lighted up at the same time, and meanwhile, we capture the corresponding images. For every single pixel, we obtain the influential blocks from the candidate list bk and subdivide them into 4 small blocks. Pay attention. All these subblocks will again be candidate blocks which may have contribution to the pixel k. Now I invite you to a concrete example while thinking about the pseudocode we mentioned before. For the first frame, the pixel has bk, which contains block 1 as the influential candidate. Notice that I named it as candidate, which means before we illuminate the scene and test every block individually, we don't know if it really affects some pixels in this scenario. So after making the illumination and capturing the result, the block 1 will definitely be the influential block for every pixel because block 1 is the whole project image, right? So then we will subdivide it into 4 subblocks, which are again considered to potentially have contribution to every pixel, which means every pixel may be affected by 2, 3, 4, 5 simultaneously. That's just assumption. That's just candidate, not really. So now we are going to test them again. Before this, we need to find out the conflict edges are built among these subblocks because we just assume every block affects every pixel in this scenario. So edges are built among them. So this is how these colors come up with. Then we'll subdivide these 4 blocks into 4 complete subgraphs and assume that we find block 2 and block 5 both affect some pixel. So we'll create a counter subgraph among the subblocks of block 2 and 5, which means in next time we don't want to simultaneously light up the pixels, light up the subblocks in block 2 and block 5. However, there's no such edges between subblocks of 2, 3, 4. Then, after running graph coloring, you see the result in the third frame. Blocks 16 to 21 have distinct colors from blocks 6 to 11. Subblocks that fall in other parent blocks may share same colors, while those who fall into the same parent block should have distinct colors. And here is the video for the adaptive scanning algorithm. The left is the projector pattern, and the right is the camera image. Now we want to consider some potential problems. First, adaptive algorithm cannot handle every scenarios. Of course, it cannot. But for some extreme cases, this adaptive scanning will turn out to be a brute force scanning. But the worst issue is that a few blocks are lighted up, the illumination will be too low, or due to some severe interreflections, the signal level is below the lowest threshold of the camera, so the blocks will be carried away and their energy lost. To mitigate the energy loss, the authors find out a novel hierarchical structure to store the light transport matrix. Circularly, if we store the light transport matrices of all levels, there's no information loss. But to reduce the storage, we only store the value at the highest possible resolution, so we obtain the hierarchical representation of the light transport matrix, which means every light transport matrix becomes more sparser. Notice that the light transport matrix of different level should contain different number of columns. Specifically, the light transport matrix of level k should contain 4 to the power of k minus 1 columns. So the recovered dual image should have different sides. Now we need to introduce the resizing operation f here to resize the synthetical dual image of different level, and then we blend them together using summation. Let's have a review to the previous adaptive algorithm. To add the hierarchical assembling, we'll need to add several lines, as the red parts show. Then, if the measured pixel level is less than the threshold or is the last iteration, we need to store the pixel value to the light transport matrix at the current level and stopping subdivide these blocks into subblocks. Otherwise, we keep subdividing the blocks until the measured pixel level is less than its threshold. Let's raise an example with both hierarchical assembly and the adaptive scanning algorithm. Here, because my laser pointer doesn't work well, so I would like to move all these details into the lecture. But I'm still here to give you a big idea. For the first level, all the pixels will be lighted up, and the projected image will be regarded as a one-by-one image. So we can only get then one column light transport matrix. Then we divide the whole block into 4 subblocks and then light them up one by one. So we can get a 4-column matrix in this level. Pay attention. Here we can only get the dual image at the resolution of 2 by 2. For the third level, we do have some parallelization among pixels. But notice that we won't parallelize pixels at the top left corner with the bottom right corner, because there are some conflicts detected in the previous level. But we can still obtain the 16 columns of the light transfer matrix within 8 scannings. But the recovered dual image may have some artifacts because of the lower illumination conditions. So we can borrow the information captured in the previous levels to compensate this kind of loss. Let me give you a visualization of the recovered dual image of different levels. Here you can see the lower level contains the energy loss in the higher level, so when we sum them together, we'll finally get a refined result. Now, let's look into the further application of the dual image, scene relighting. Let's look at some preliminary experimental results of this paper. The leftmost one is the primary result of this paper and which is captured by the camera. The right one is the dual image, which is synthesized by the dual photography. Then, the rightmost one is a video of the applications to the scene relighting, where the author virtually projects the beam of light to the scene, and they synthesize a dynamic pattern to relight the scene. You can see how the specular interreflection and the caustics move consistently with the light beams or the pattern. Let me introduce a more amazing application of the dual photography. If we want to capture the 6D reflection field, please recall what's the 6D reflection field. Here 4D for the incident lights to the scene, and 2D for the capture lights to the camera. A conventional way to capture the 6D RF is to keep one camera static and reposition the projector. At each position, the projector should scan the scene pixel by pixel. But with dual photography, we can interchange the role of the projector and the camera. So we can replace the camera with the projector and replace the projectors with cameras. Because the cameras are passive devices, we can only use the one projector to scan the scene pixel by pixel and capture multiple views by the camera. Then, we interchange back the role of the camera and the projector. We can synthesize the same 6D reflection field. Let's turn to another fancy application of dual photography. In this experimental configuration, we can see the camera can only capture the back of the card, while the projector shoots the light into the front of the card. The lights will be reflected on the surface of the card and the book. Then it will finally pass to the camera. By dual photography, we can synthesize the dual image of the front of the card and the viewpoint of the projector. But why we can do this? It is because when light passes through the front of the card, it carries the information about the front of the card. To wrap up, let me draw some necessary conclusions. In one sentence, dual photography leverages Helmholtz's reciprocity to computationally synthesize a second view and the viewpoint of the projector, which enables that the role of camera and projector can be exchanged. What this paper brings to us? First, it spends a really long time to talk about a efficient and robust acquisition of light transport matrix. Then, it introduced some new techniques to scene relighting. Then, the most impressive one is the new techniques to capture the 6D reflection field. Talk about the limitations. When the global illumination is significant, it will reduce parallelism of the adaptive method. Second, substitution of projector for camera may not always be desirable because cameras may have drawbacks in depth of field or difficulties in control of settings like exposure. Third, suppose the camera and projector are at a large angle apart from each other. There will be small amount of light coming from the projector will go to the camera, which also means when we trace these lights back, there will be small amount of light go to the projector eventually. So we cannot recover the dual image robustly. With this, I thank you for your attention.